Hey, welcome to the Closing Time Podcast. My name is David Mansour, and I'm a mortgage loan officer here in Peachtree City, Georgia. And the goal of my podcast is simply to give you some insight and maybe look behind the curtains in the lives of some of the people that you do business with and see who they are outside of their careers. I hope you enjoy. Cheers.
Cheers.
Joe Campbell, what the fire truck? You lost.
We did. In some ways, we did. Yes.
I mean, that is perfect. God, I love it. You seem to say the right thing at all the right times. I love you, man.
Thanks, man. It goes back to you as well.
We've talked about how I'm not a big fan of politics.
All right.
I learned a bit about politics by watching you go through this. Some of the stuff reinforced why I've always hated politics.
Yep.
But also, I learned that it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. And I think, I say we lost in some ways, but in some ways we won. There's comments out there now saying, wow, this is what can happen when you try to run a positive campaign as opposed to the negative and the bashing type of campaign. And we got so much momentum just by talking about what's important and not trying to bash everybody else in the race, and just focus on listening to people and finding out what's important to Peachtree City.
Yeah. We're going to be all over the place today, so I apologize, but I love that. I read an article in the Citizen that at the end, just talking about, it was praise for you on how you ran the campaign and how it was kind of like, it was almost like a Mighty Ducks type of story, even though we lose the first round.
Yeah.
It's they were like, no one expected anything because no one, this is your first round running for anything for politics.
Right.
And people were just like, oh, that's nice that he's coming in there. And then people started falling in love with you and your campaign. Yep. And I don't want to keep saying you because I know you don't want to take all that on, because it was everything about the way your whole, and I'm going to call it team, because it was your neighbors, your kid doing the videos, the people standing on the corners, our Boy Scout troop. Like, I was surprised at how many of those parents got off of their butts and got involved. And I just thought that was awesome.
It was really cool, actually. And I think it reinforces that you don't do something like this on your own. And you find the people who believe in what you're talking about, or at least the ability to make change if you can. And it's not, saying they buy into it is not really the right term. They just understood and supported that concept of, wow, let's focus on what's important and let's focus on how we can make Peachtree City better. It's already great. So it wasn't like we have a hard task, really. There are some things we got to focus on, but we live in a pretty wonderful place and we want to keep it that way. And I think these people just bought into that concept of wanting to keep Peachtree City great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think there is a little bit of overprotection. I was going to turn that into a verb somehow, or an adverb or something. Overprotectionism. I look at my neighbors, and I love my neighbors. I live on a great street, and they all seem to care a lot about each other and staying in touch with each other on the whole street. But they also want to keep everything in Peachtree City the exact same.
Yep.
Not in my neighborhood, not my backyard, no apartments.
Yep.
No, we don't want bars, no new restaurants. We want the same four things that are here. Can you bring back the skating ring and the movie theater and shut it down from there? And I don't think that's reasonable as well. So I love new breath, ideas, and growth to an extent. We don't want traffic and all that, but we just want a fun community that we can love to live in. And our kids will come back to.
That's right.
That's a big part.
And I think that's how we have to think about this. Yes, I love the small town feel and the green and stuff like that, but we have opportunities where we got to grow and we got to keep up with the times. We all use smartphones now. We don't use rotary phones anymore. So it's an example how you can use a smartphone but still keep the way things are pretty much as they seem. But we've got to bring ourselves into the 22nd century, the 21st century, and we can do that without losing what's great and the charm of Peachtree City.
Yeah. And I think the hard thing about politics is there's not the instant gratification is probably a bad word, but it's
that's what people
like
want.
with the data centers and the apartment buildings, like we don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
And sometimes when it happens and you're like, man, this is bad over here. And we look back and go, well, that's a decision that we didn't have to make 10 years ago or 5 years ago when it happens. So the politics does matter, which is against anything that I believe in. But so it does matter, but it's hard to dive into it and to know the effects, because we all want to. I believe in apartment complexes because not everybody can afford to buy a house. Not everybody wants to buy a house, and that doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to live in my neighborhood.
That's right.
Should we have 400,000? I don't know what that number is, but the anti-apartment complexes, the anti-bars or restaurants. It's I don't know.
I heard. I mostly heard about apartments and
I'm making the bar restaurant part up.
But
I just assume they don't want that.
That came up actually in the previous election. There was a person who was running who thought we should have some more of those gathering places later in the evening for adults and stuff like that. And boy, there was some pushback against that. But in this campaign, there was a lot of talk about high density housing and apartments. And if you even suggest that you might entertain some version of that, you're vilified immediately.
See, that drives me crazy about politics, because that's a talking point that doesn't really matter. It's such a small thing, but it's in their minds. The same with the traffic. And this is a good question. Does a city council person really affect a traffic pattern that's already in process by the DOT? Can you really affect that at all?
Sort of, in as much as, and we talked about this last time about how you put a store like Trader Joe's in an already congested area.
Right.
And what's that effect going to be on that traffic? DOT owns the road. They're going to handle, at least hopefully with input from the local community, the city council, on what it should look like maybe, or what we think can solve that. But the city council definitely has a lot of input about what goes in and around that traffic circle.
It's what could make it even worse. It's future things.
Yes.
But for people to go talk about the traffic, and I think when most people address it, they address the weird lanes and all that.
Yeah.
And that's a done deal. You're not stopping that.
It's not. They're in the middle of this project. I mean, they'll be done next summer, but we're not going to stop it or change it at this point. They want to finish it, study it, and then go from there.
So 15 years from now, we need a good city councilman to go for the next traffic time.
Perhaps. It's one of those things. So, and I talked about that, I think, in my campaign, was how, I wanted to do a broader traffic study, and the trolls online came back, we don't need a study. We already know what's the problem. That's where the ignorance comes in, because if you want the DOT to come in and help fix it, they're going to do a study. They just do, and that's just how it happens. So you have to do a study. So if we're going to do one, let's do a comprehensive citywide one. So if we can work on this, we can work on a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, I'm sure they all affect each other.
Yeah.
Let's back to just the election, or just the process. Answer this any way you want. I'm going to ask, would you do it again? And I don't want you to answer that as though you're having to say whether you're going to run for election again in 4 years, because there's no telling where your life takes you. But just as far as what you went through, we'll go into some of the details, but would you do it again? Is it worth it? Would you, if somebody else in the community was saying, was thinking about doing it and said, Joe, what do you think? Is that worth what you went through? What would you say to him?
If you find this video, please subscribe.
You got to have thick skin, and you can't be surprised by what comes your way. I think going into this initially, being a little naive in the fact that we're a small town, everybody loves everybody, Peachtree City, think that. And so I went into this thinking it's going to be a pretty even-keeled campaign, and we'll talk about stuff, but it's not going to get out of control. And I was wrong in that aspect. It became volatile at times. Again, I had thick skin, so it wasn't affecting me a ton, but people around me, my wife, my kid, they hear comments from other people. Even kids were making comments, which is crazy. And the impact on the two of them would make me second guess if I would do it again. If I were single and doing this on my own, maybe. But even then, you're like, we put a lot of effort in it. It cost more than I thought it was going to cost. And luckily, we had some good support financially. But if I were to do it again in this capacity right now, I would need 100% blessing from my wife and my child, to be honest with you.
Well, your son will be, is it every 4 years at city council, or 2 or 4?
It's a 4-year term. I think in 2 years, there's going to be 2 more seats now that are going to be up for election. So
he still would only be 15. So that's still a big, because I was going to say at 17, he's about out the door.
No, he'd
He's
still be
not.
around.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. That is tough. So, the parts that I hate about it was the thing that I hate about politics is when somebody can't say anything about themselves, all they can say is the other person. And this is huge on the national stage.
Yep.
When the Democrats have no talking points other than what the Republicans are doing wrong, and vice versa, because the entire time the Democrats were in control, the Republicans did nothing but talk, and Trump's whole campaign was talking about what the Democrats are doing wrong.
Yep.
And he still blames them.
Yep.
And now the Democrats are blaming the Republicans for everything that's going on. And we talk about AI as the problem. Shit, politicians are a bigger problem than AI because I don't know who's telling the truth. I don't know what is good, what is bad. I don't know who's controlling the economy, who's not. But let's bring it back to the local, because we did see a little bit of that.
Yeah, we did.
We saw a little bit of people trying to just say what is wrong with that other person instead of talking about, I just don't get why you can't just tell me why I should vote for you and not why I shouldn't vote for the other person.
Yeah, I think it's because you have a weak campaign. You have a weak platform. I came in with a little bit of benefit of being a nobody. Nobody really knew who I was. A couple of people did because I've done some stuff around the city, but in a broader spectrum of Peachtree City, not really them people who I was. And certainly my opponent and some of the others, they had a hard time trying to find dirt on me because I've never been arrested or never had any issues like that. And I've never ran for office before. This is the first time. So when it came down to it, that was the only avenue that they had, was to try to label me as something that I wasn't, because that way they could try to vilify me as whatever that is. And it sort of backfired on them, I think, and to the point where they even they did a simple people search. They didn't even do the good ones. They just did a simple one that had me registered in Florida, that had me working at a warehouse, and they knew, because I've said I live here, obviously, and I'm retired. And then they had a list of, this is his family members. None of it was accurate. And so, the warehouse that they said I was working at supposedly doesn't even exist in Georgia. And the only family members they got right was my wife and I. The rest of them, we don't even know who they were. I mean, I think they were some were ethnic. And so I think they were trying to highlight some of that, I think. But it was not accurate. And that was part of the frustrating piece, especially for my wife seeing this. Like, they're saying this about you. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? It's not true. And we can say that it's not true. And we can show that it's not true. So let's just forget about it. Let's just stay the course of where we are.
The problem is the people are stupid. And I'm talking to y'all. Y'all are stupid. And not in an intelligence way, but let's call it lazy. Like, you will simply believe anything. And that's why they say it, because no one's going to do the research.
Yep.
I'm not going to do it. They're not going to do it. It's a seed. And even if I don't believe it, it's still a seed.
Yeah.
And it's so unethical. And to me, that is why it drives me crazy, because it's just unethical for you to plant seeds, true or not, because people are going to believe it. No one's going to do a simple Google search to find out. Obviously, if they didn't do a good enough Google search, constituent, is that what you call the people?
Yeah.
The people that voted are not going to do the research. They're just going to get that negative implant and move on for their day. You told me about a person that you knocked on their door and they said, I'm voting for you because I like you, but I really don't want to because your political affiliation.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's not even the correct affiliation.
It wasn't even true. So, and I saw a lot of that, and part of what I really liked about this campaign was knocking on doors. But when you talk to people, and there's certain demographics of people that you can tell just they'll believe whatever the loudest noise is. And again, there wasn't a lot about me because there wasn't anything that they really say about me, but I could hear them talking about the other candidates. And because three of them kind of ran on a slate that put the other three of us de facto kind of separate and running together, which we didn't. We are all independent. But they would say, well, I don't, you this and this about this candidate. And I'm like, that's just not true. Oh, but I heard them say, I'm like, did you do your research?
Yeah,
did you dig into that? Well, no, because they said it was the truth. I'm like, but it's not, and that probably is one of the biggest frustration is just people don't do their research. And I think there's plenty of messages that we try to put out is just do the research, do your homework, find out about the candidates, find out the truth about the candidates. Don't just listen to what the loudest voice is saying.
Right. It's almost like if anybody was ever in debate club, a lot of times you were assigned with the opposite view.
Yep.
And I know I've taken investment courses, And part of, if you were trying to buy a stock, you had to build a case against the stock.
Yeah.
Like that was a part of your due diligence. And you have to research the opposite side and be able to present that. Otherwise, you're not really doing your research. You're only buying what you want to hear.
Yeah.
But if you all of a sudden start researching the opposite side, so that goes to the national, all the way down in politics, is trying to find, anybody that says anything about any party or politician, I say, tell me one good thing about them.
Mhm.
Tell me one thing they've done good. And if they can't say anything, then again, I have no respect for their opinion if they can't tell me one good thing, because there's no way that they've not done something right. There's no way Trump hasn't done a few good things. There's no way Biden didn't do a few good things.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So you should be able to speak that. So in the same line, I don't even know if you can address this, but I don't know if it's a Citizen, whatever article or newspaper is local, I don't think anybody reads that crap anyway, except for the people that care too much.
Yeah.
So probably 11 people. But it did feel like the local papers were swayed towards a whole, one side of the park was all negative and the other side was positive. Can you address that locally and nationally? Do you think that media sources, not can be, because we know they can be, do you think they are biased and not controlled, because I think they just, maybe the type of person that is passionate enough to write or do that type of person is the type of person that votes along a political party. How much should we believe any local or national source when they report negative on a candidate? Is it accurate at all? Not at all. I'm sure there's a little truth behind everything. Is it biased?
I think inherently there's always some bias. Is
it balanced? We know it's biased, but do you think it's balanced? Bias?
In my personal instance, between my opponent and myself, I think very much so. And even so much as one of the articles guy was writing about, he had incredibly nice things and positive things to say about myself. And then he admitted that he loves the other guy. He's great. He's friends with him and he really respects him and likes him a lot. And there would have been an opportunity, I'm sure, to try to put me down in some way or another. And they didn't. And he painted us both in a pretty good light. Some of the other candidates, they didn't. But what I appreciated, I guess, is they brought the receipts and said, here's why. Here's the documentation as to why we're saying what we're saying. Sorry it doesn't paint your candidate in a great light. But I didn't see a lot of just pulling things out of the air to say bad things about certain people. At least they came with some receipts. People weren't always responsive to those receipts and the facts, but when you get hooked on certain people, get hooked on certain candidates, they don't care about anything that might be said bad or that they did wrong. They just said this is the guy we want, and a lot of times it's just strictly party driven. There's not even consideration about is this a good person or not a good person or the right person. It's just strictly party driven.
Yeah. Tell me if this technique would work. I don't know if you watch any of the college football, the pressers, like when Kirby Smart this week starts talking about Texas. He ain't got nothing negative to say about Texas. You listen to his press conference, he is building them up like he's trying to sell them as the best team in the world. And it blows my mind. I love it, but it drives me crazy at the same time. Because it all of a sudden, I'm like nervous, because he's like, oh yeah, Arch is incredible. He's going to run all over the place and they're lying and they showed up. And it's just nonstop about how great. And every college team does that. Yeah. They talk about how great their opponent is. Obviously, they're not trying to give anybody bulletin board material, but it's also shows a little bit of respect. Like, hey, this person isn't evil. This team is not horrible. They've got these are good qualities. Find the good in them. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it might be a good political strategy just to go, oh man, he's great. Yeah. I love him. He's a great family man. He did great on that. Did you see him do that? He always is at Boy Scouts. He's like, but where we differ is I think the budget should be this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm listening to you now.
I think it's from a political perspective, you don't want to sell your opponent to be better than yourself. So there's that fine line. So our approach was more about, we're not going to dig on the opponent. We're just going to tell you why I'm better. and why we believe I'm better. And I think we did that. I think we showed that, hey, I've got experience. I have experience in some very specific things that has to do with what we're talking about. When they say about what Peachtree City people are concerned about, I have experience in some of those things. And then, there are certain areas where we might have skirted a little bit to say, hey, Google my opponent. Just Google them.
Right.
And when you do, these are the top 3 things you're going to find out. And none of them were overly positive. So, we stopped source of just going, and behind the scenes, we would get fed stuff like, you need to say this and you need to say that. And he's done this, this, and this. And some of that is just like, you know what? There's a certain line I don't think we want to cross. And so we're going to just let that sit here. But things that you can show that people can look up and research, we highlighted that and just said, look into that.
Right.
And then from our perspective, we just said, listen, I've done this, and I've done this, and this applies to what we need to be done in Peachtree City. So that's why we believe I'm the best candidate.
Okay. So tell me something good about the guy that did win the election.
So Clint has got a ton of experience in I think in a couple different areas. I think he consults with water and water conservation and how to retain some water and how to treat it the right way. So there is some of that scientific background I think that he has that comes into play. I honestly believe he does want to have some fiscal responsibility for the city. I think the politics, unfortunately, got in the way of that and his approach, certainly lately. But I mean, he's not a complete idiot. He's not a dummy, and he's got some good sense about him. I think he just got some bad advice from his other 2 partners, and fortunately, and when it was all said and done, I sent him a note, congratulations, great job, and I said, a little advice, you should have crushed me. And you didn't. And the feedback when I'm shaking hands with people out there, a lot of the feedback was, if he hadn't partnered up with so-and-so, we probably would have voted for him or at least considered it. And because you could tell that the guy who was running the show was giving them bad advice. Wow. And fortunately he listened to it. And I said, you won, be your own man. And I said, people will have more respect for you if you just be your own man. Because he does have the ability to do this job. But he's got to be his own guy. He can't be led around by a puppet master who does not have the best interests of the city in mind.
That's awesome. I want to circle back to something. Let's talk about money. You talked about this was more expensive. I don't know. Can you give me a range of, like, I know you got to pay for your own signs and flyers or whatever, but what is a range of money that people spend on an election like this? Is it like $5,000 to $50,000, or is it smaller or bigger? Or is it?
So here's how naive I was. When you first start this thing, you have to turn in some initial paperwork that says, I'm going to collect, donations, but not to exceed $2,500. And so
From one person?
Just overall.
Total.
Yeah. And that's kind of a start. If you do get more than that, then you just file different paperwork after the fact. But I went in thinking, I'm not going to be doing any more than this, and turned it in.
Them signs.
So I'm pretty confident I spent on the low end, just because our campaign was when you talk about grassroots, it was literally grassroots. The money that we raised for our campaign came from our friends and neighbors. There were some people we met on the campaign trail out there that donated out of the blue. I'd never met before. And I made it a point, if we got those type of, I wouldn't talk to everybody, but when I saw this one donation come in, I don't know who this person is. Wow. And, they had to add their address and stuff. So I drove out and met them, and we're pretty good friends now, just because meeting them and understanding the reasons why they were donating and because they believed in the cause. I will say that, again, we were on the low end. You've got to come in prepared to at least spend $15,000, and that's on a local small town. Wow. So what
will be a high end? Because we hear that the other gentleman that won another seat spent a lot of money, and I don't know if you know that number, or if you could just guess that budget, or somebody else. Like, does somebody spend $50,000 on a local election?
I don't know what anybody else's numbers are. I would not be surprised if somebody got close to that number.
Wow. And that is typically funded by other people. They're not just coming out of pocket.
Yeah, and because you have to report it all, no matter what, even if it's out of pocket, it has
And
to
is
be
that published in advance?
as
Like
far
when
as so we had to file. You have to file paperwork every month during the campaign. You have to disclose your financials, and so we had to disclose all the donations that came in, and we had to disclose what we spent it on. Even out of pocket, like when we did some out of pocket, you have to put it down as a donation in kind, pretty much. So yeah, it's all got to be reported, whether it comes out of my pocket or comes out of our campaign donations were. It all has to be reported. Luckily, the majority of what we spent came from our friends and neighbors who were very kind in their donations.
So when you went to that assisted living place, and I know that you were giving all those old people in there $50 a piece, and you were busting them in to vote. Like, do you report that, or
all they got were back scratchers, which we got feedback from somebody else whose mom happened.
Oh, you did go there and do that? I would have made that up.
No. I actually went to 3 different assisted livings. There's 2 of them that wouldn't let me, but 3 of them opened their arms to us. But one of our tight crew here, her mother was in one, and she goes, believe it or not, they love back scratchers. So we bought a pile of back scratchers, stuck my sticker on them, and when I went and talked to them, and we thought, sure enough, everybody wanted a back scratcher. They all got I made sure they all got back scratchers. So
that's awesome. Well, my mom runs, what does she call it? Waymakers group for her church. It's all, I don't know what age it is, 65 and up, but they have dinners. And I had a friend of mine that was running for mayor in Noonan. He wanted to come and speak to him. I was like, why you want to come talk to my mom? It was like, and there were 30 people there, and he was so excited to be able to come and be in front of them.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the other person running found out that he came to my mom's next meeting.
Yep.
He was like, and I'm like, wow, that's like, because he knew that those 30 people there, probably 28 of them are going to vote, where he can go to a high school football.
And I got to tell you, all of them had great questions. All 3 that I went to. The first one was just kind of a meet and greet type thing. It was about an hour. They asked really great questions. They had really great comments. Even though, you think they're confined to this place, they get out and do stuff, and they definitely vote. One of them was a lunch and learn, so they were in their lunch and talking, and again, just asking great questions. And then one of them, they had me come to their happy hour, which I was like, "You guys have a happy hour?" And by golly, they do. And it was well done, and they had a guitar player there and stuff. But these people again were just asking very, very direct, very good questions. They're engaged. Our seniors are engaged.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, I had a great question and I just lost it. I was going to ask, I'm never going to be able to come back and I don't want to lose it. But I got to move on. I know what it was. Anybody besides myself trying to get out of speeding tickets? Anybody go, hey, I'm going to vote for you, but I'm going to need you to get this stop sign approved or that roundabout.
I was thinking that was going to happen, but it really didn't. It really didn't. I mean, people were just, not really. So I'll put it this way. I was knocking on doors over near Battery Park. And this is one of the cool things too. You think you know what Peachtree City residents really are concerned about, and you kind of do. But as we got into each neighborhood has their own little passion project that they're. So I'm over there knocking on doors, and one of the guys says, "What are your thoughts about them wanting to put bathrooms over here at Battery Way, and expanding the parking lot and doing all that stuff?" Well, I'm like, bathrooms sound great to me. I think everybody'd want real bathrooms instead of a porta potty. And he's like, "No, you didn't do your homework." And I'm like, "Talk to me, tell me." And so he started going into detail about there's activity that goes on here at night that is not great, and the kids are all coming here and they're smoking the dope and they're doing different things. And he goes, and then he started showing me pictures of this car sits there for an hour. The guy never gets out of his car. He's got Coweta plates. He just sits there. Nobody knows what he does. Blah blah blah. And I said, "Would you call the police?" "Yeah, we've called the police before." And then I started hearing these other stories about how people use that boat ramp that aren't even from Fayette County, and there's been some commotion with that, and that the golf carts speed by there all the time. You got a playground there, and you've got the park benches, and it's just they're really concerned. I'm like, okay, now you're making sense. I get that. Okay, yeah, you're right. You don't want to invite a ton more activity here because it's not great for your neighborhood. It's not good for your experience. And they're like, yeah, but the city, they're all pushing this on us, and we're a neighborhood park, we're not a city park, and so they're trying to push us. And I'm like, okay, I get it, I understand. I said, well, you know what?
That's a neighborhood park?
It is, and if you look on the city site, it'll tell you it's listed as neighborhood park. So there is an instance where they weren't asking me to say, hey, you got to be against this. They were just saying, what do you think? And I was upfront and honest at first, but then I'm like, when I walked away, and I probably talked to easily 30 or 40 people in one day over there, and 90% of them were, we don't want this. We don't want this in our neighborhood. And it wasn't so much not in our backyard, but they were giving me great examples of why they don't want to put a permanent bathroom there. They don't want expanded parking there. And they had great reasons why. And so I walked away going, okay, that makes sense to me. If that was me, I wouldn't want that either. And so and they said, well, do you promise if you get elected? And I'm like, you've convinced me that it's not a great idea. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the next step would be then, if you get into city council, we've got to be able to reiterate those points to the rest of the council saying, I'm concerned because they're concerned, and here's what their concerns are. And, I encourage them that, hey, you guys gotta bring this up. And like we've got this. Yeah. And they actually have a neighborhood gathering of information that they want to present to the city. And I think they will. I hope they do, because what they're talking about and their concerns are very legit.
Yeah, I get that. But I don't know that not putting the bathroom, and I don't know anything about this, but I don't know that not putting the bathroom there solves the problem. Why don't we focus on the problem? Because the bathroom definitely helps, because that is a big time place where, yes, a lot of kids go there. But I also go there with my kids and have since they were 3, because I live in the neighborhood right next door.
Yep.
And we fish, and the Boy Scouts meet there, and race people meet there.
They do.
And I think a bathroom there is pretty cool. I love that.
That's how I went in. That's exactly how I went in.
But I understand those concerns as well, because I do see the amount. One, I give teenagers the benefit of the doubt. When I go through there, there's loud music. There's some cuss words that I want to go, bruh, turn it down. Like, my kids don't. But so many people are. There's 90% of those kids are so polite. So kudos to Peachtree City parents, because 90% of those kids are polite and respectful. And when they notice it's an adult or a child, they make an adjustment or they move. And that's just life. Life ain't going to go perfect.
That is the case during the day. I can tell from experience when my son was in high school.
Yeah.
And we'd let him go out, on his own on the weekends, take the golf cart out, do his thing. He had to come back and talk to me when he got home, so when he was home safe. And I will tell you the stories that he told me about what goes on there at night.
Really?
I understand whether it's residents.
But see, I've seen a lot of cops there right at dusk, like shooing them off. So I'm guessing they probably shoo them off, and then they know when the cop leaves.
Yep.
An hour later, they come back. And
to your point, yes, you have to solve the problem first. So my approach would be, don't put the bathrooms in and stuff yet. Let's have a bigger police presence, not only during the day, but it's got to go well into the evening, and it's got to be prominent. They've got to be there.
A big camera. How about this? Make the bathroom all glass. That way they can't go in there and hide. Just a big glass bathroom.
Or just put a camera in there, right?
A camera in there. That's perfect.
But their concern too was, hey, you put bathrooms in there, they're just going to go in there and do their thing, and instead of smoking or doing whatever their drugs over in Snake Island, they're going to come over and do it in there. I think you have to solve you're right. Yeah. You solve the problem. Let's get police presence over there more so than there is now. And it's got to be throughout the evening, especially on the weekends. It's got to go throughout. Once you get that established and you can get some of that nefarious behavior done and out of the way, they may come around and say, okay, now we're open to having a bathroom here. Can we keep that presence going?
Yeah.
So,
and I guess, and especially summertime, I know those kids are out there a lot more.
Yes.
In this time, I know a lot of people go out there and see the sunset.
Yep.
And then it fills up with kids. Sometimes there's loud music, sometimes there's not. But
we're over there all the time. I go fishing over there. My wife and I and Grant, we go over there and just have a picnic, just because it's a great setting.
Awesome. Kid's home.
He's home.
Hey. All right. Well, I need to wrap it up anyway. I don't know
Okay.
how long we've been. I tried to keep it under 30 minutes. I think we're over that because you are so easy to talk to.
I appreciate that, man. And thank you for this. And if I can, thank you, Peachtree City. Last off-cycle election, it was just over 6,000 people who voted.
I meant to bring that up. The numbers were great.
This one was over 11,000.
That's huge.
Yeah, and the fact that we only came up 216 votes short, my wife tells me the win with this is that 4 months ago, nobody knew who Joe Campbell was. And in that time, we almost unseated the incumbent who has a very broad spectrum with his name out there. And he goes, she said, if anything, you've got to be happy with that. So thank you, Peachtree City. You are awesome. And thank you for getting out to vote.
Yeah. And we talked about you leaving your website open, which is
campbell4ptc.com.
And you were potentially going to continue to maybe be involved in politics, like an interview.
We
I don't
have
know
some
if you want
thoughts.
to speak on that.
Yeah, we have. Well, it's infancy right now, but we have some thoughts that maybe we keep the site open. We still stay engaged with the city in a couple different ways.
Awesome. All right. So check out the site. We'll try to post it if it's up there. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Cheers, my friend.
All right.
Are you having a David day?